Absolutely, make sure that you get in touch with your views as usual on gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be getting to those throughout the show, but first, here's the latest news.
A very good morning. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Residents in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, were urged to get to bomb shelters this morning as officials declared the threat of a missile attack. The UK Ministry of Defence says Russian troops have not made any significant breakthroughs as fighting continues to the northwest of the capital. However, 4 cities are currently encircled by Russian forces and continue to suffer heavy shelling. Meanwhile, Ukrainian air defences have prevented Russian fighter jets from achieving any degree of control in the air. Former head of counter-terrorism at the MOD, Chip Chapman, says Moscow has the will to grind down Ukraine's defences.
So the bad news is Russia is unlikely to back down, and that there's always the potential for unintended escalation, and that they will grind down the Ukrainian military with no regard for civilian casualties. So that's all bad news. The good news is they can't see how Russia can take Kyiv and how that they would replace Zelenskyy with a puppet regime.
Russia has said its troops will stop firing on the capital, along with 4 other cities, to let civilians evacuate today. Sumi's regional governor says the humanitarian corridor in his city will continue after 5,000 civilians were evacuated yesterday. The UN says the number of refugees who fled Ukraine to neighbouring countries now exceeds 2 million people. The Russian Foreign Ministry says about 140,000 Ukrainians have fled to Russia. Yulia Gritsenko escaped Kyiv and is now in the Lviv region. She says some Ukrainians are spending most of their days in bomb shelters.
In the other regions, the situation is quite grave now. People are sitting in the shelters from almost all day. And, why there are no many footages from citizen journalists and so on, it's just because not always you can go out and take some pictures because you just may die.
The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says 760 visas have been granted so far for Ukrainians coming to the UK. He told GB News Britain's entry programme is a generous one.
It takes a bit of time to sort of crank up the system to make sure that we have visas and checks in place. Your viewers will understand we do need to check who is coming here for obvious reasons. But we've cranked up from just 800 appointments a day to 6,000 available.
Experts are warning sanctions on Russian oil will further increase prices at the petrol pump in the UK. The UK is phasing out Russian oil by the end of this year. It's feared that will put extra pressure on the cost of living. America says it will also ban gas imports, with the US President Joe Biden claiming it will be a powerful blow to Russia's economy. Ukraine's president thanked America for the decision to ban Russian oil imports.
For all the evil, America bans imports of oil from Russia, petroleum products, gas, coal, prohibits US citizens from any investment in Russia's fuel and energy sector. I'm grateful personally to President Biden of the United States for this decision, for this leadership, for this most powerful signal to the whole world. It is simple. Every penny paid to Russia turns into bullets and projectiles that fly to other sovereign states.
The United States has rejected Poland's offer to hand over fighter jets to a US base. It was part of a plan to provide aircraft to the Ukrainian armed forces. The Pentagon said the prospect of flying combat aircraft from NATO territory into the war zone raises serious concerns for the entire NATO alliance. Russia's defense ministry has warned that countries offering airfields to Ukraine for attacks on Russia may be considered as having entered the conflict. Meanwhile, the government has announced he's made it a criminal offence for any Russian aircraft to enter UK airspace. The Foreign Secretary will meet her US counterpart, Antony Blinken, in Washington today to discuss what more the UK and America can do to support Ukraine. Ahead of the trip, Liz Truss declared the crisis a wake-up call for free democracies. Former Defence Secretary Malcolm Rifkin says the Russian invasion of Ukraine has had huge global repercussions.
What happens in Ukraine is an attempt by Putin to extinguish a whole country as an independent state. And that has profound implications for the whole of Europe and indeed for the wider world. For example, we're seeing that the Chinese president now is supporting attempts to get a negotiated ceasefire. That is very much to be welcomed.
In a brief look at other news now, nearly a third of UK universities are in financial deficit. A fall in fees from international students, as well as universities spending money to adapt to remote teaching, contributed to it. The National Audit Office also found that there weren't enough strong measures to actually judge the value for money students get from their courses. The ancient wreck of the Endurance has been found on the bottom of the sea in Antarctica. Sir Ernest Shackleton's ship was discovered over 3,000 metres down. It's the first glimpse of the famous vessel since it was crushed by ice and sank on its fateful expedition in 1915. You're up to date now on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head to the point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin Iman, and Patrick Christys on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up for you to kickstart your day, so here's what's on the menu.
Well, the latest on the refugee crisis in Ukraine as thousands more continue to flee the country. We'll be crossing to our reporter Bradley Harris, who is on the Ukraine-Poland border.
Yes, and the former Commons Speaker John Bercow is suspended from the Labour Party after an independent inquiry labelled him a serial bully and liar. We'll be speaking to Conservative MP Andrew Bridgen about his time challenging the former Speaker in the Commons.
Yes, they certainly didn't get along, did they? But anyway, and finally, as the UK begins to phase out Russian oil imports, we ask, is this gesture meaningful enough to offset the rising cost of petrol to the driver as prices get even closer to £2 a litre?
We have all that coming up and much more across the programme, so make sure they get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick gives his views on the bully, John Bercow.
A tyrannical leader who rules by fear and intimidation, mercilessly targeting his enemies in a never-ending campaign of terror. No, I'm not talking about Vladimir Putin. I am instead talking about little John Bercow. The dumpy despot has now been stripped of his parliamentary pass after being found to be a serial bully and a liar by an independent inquiry. 21 out of 35 complaints against the stroppy speaker were upheld, and these included his fiery temper, swearing, throwing a phone towards a member of staff so hard that it smashed. He imitated a female member of staff and was disparaging about another member of staff's background and upbringing, apparently. It's hardly puzzling that the inquiry came to the conclusions that they did, as it notes, quote, remarkably, in his interviews with the investigator, Bercow chose to imitate the complainant's voice and words on at least 20 occasions. I mean, for goodness sake, John. His temper is now the stuff of legend. Supposedly, his face turns puce, spit starts to fly, and he resembles a very angry, overly ripe plum. Apparently, his behaviour matched that of his stature, that of a toddler. He tried to claim that he was stitched up by a kangaroo court and that the claims were either false or exaggerated. And then he wheeled out the classic defence: diversity. He tried to claim that this was revenge for his exceptional record of modernising and diversifying the House of Commons. It doesn't seem to have modernised too much to me. If anything, it's a hark back to the bad old days where the chamber was full of overly entitled, egotistical, self-serving liars. Bercow, of course, defected to the Labour Party. His membership there may well be suspended as well. It'll be interesting to see how many of his new comrades stand by it. But Bercow, in a way, was always a socialist, wasn't he? In the sense that he's always had his hand out. It may shock you to discover how much you, the taxpayer, have been paying to keep Bercow and, of course, his devoted and dedicated wife, Sally, in the circumstances to which they became accustomed. The Speaker was paid more than £150,000 a year, higher than the Prime Minister, while he walked away with a pension worth £1 million after refusing to join Gordon Brown, David Cameron and Lord Chancellor Ken Clarke in waiving their entitlement. I mean, why should he waive that money? He put in huge amounts of work, didn't he, trying to overturn the result of the democratic Brexit referendum. We also paid £110 a month for his Sky Sports package and £158 for a 0.7-mile chauffeur ride, as well as £70 for photos to send to fans. The only way I'd buy a photograph with Bercow's face on it would be if my local pub needed a new darts board or some kindling. We paid £45k to refurbish his flat. Bercow spent almost 13 grand over 3 months on entertaining and hospitality, including £3,500 on a 3-night trip to Rome to attend a G8 speakers conference. The list goes on. Taxpayers footed a £490 bill for a new washing machine to go in a flat belonging to Mr Bercow's nanny. Presumably, his good close friend Keith Vaz could have got him a much better deal than that. Bercow has fallen a long way. He thought he was the most important person in every room, and the fact is, he's not even allowed in those rooms anymore. He always thought he'd go down in history, just not as a serial bully and a disgraced liar. Now, Bercow has dismissed the investigation as a travesty of justice and a vengeful vendetta, calling the inquiry into the complaints amateurish and based on tittle-tattle. He has not yet apologised. I'm loving the old tweets being dug out from people praising Bercow. David Lammy called him an intergalactic hero. Well, I suppose it takes one space cadet to recognise another, doesn't it? And Gary Lineker called Bercow a principled man and a tough act to follow. Yeah, yet another example of a sports star getting involved in politics with disastrous effect. When John Bercow sat in the Speaker's chair, he was a little man with quite a lot of power. And now, he's just a little man. Yeah, I mean, as you can tell, I like the guy.
I mean, it is interesting reading some of the things that were said about him. You know, James O'Brien, Brexit latest, when you're losing all the arguments and you're still too proud, ill-informed and blinkered to admit it, find a scapegoat and attack him, or her furiously for spurious reasons. John Bercow, for example.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, classic.
As you said, David Lammy, John Bercow is an intergalactic hero. In this noisy world of moneyed oafs belching their jingoism, he brings style, civility, and Shakespearean rhyme.
Look at that.
A true freestyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Chef's kiss there. Definitely. Definitely. Oh, Alistair Campbell, has he piped up as well?
He said
classic. I mean, he's a man of cracking isn't he?
Love
he always,
him.
if one thing you can trust with Alistair Campbell, it's his judgment, you know?
It is brilliant. Even Dawn Butler said, not giving Bercow a peerage is a form of bullying too. Wow.
I mean, here we go. Look, you hate to see it. You hate to see a bloke's reputation.
Oh,
in
one more very quickly.
Yeah.
Jeremy Corbyn, as Speaker John Bercow stood up for Parliament during one of the most turbulent periods in British politics. I look forward to campaigning with him for social justice and peace in the future.
Oh, well, good. Look, he's got to have loads of time for it now anyway. Right, OK. Look, keep these views coming in. Are you mourning the sad loss of John Bercow from the parliamentary estate? GBViews at gbnews.uk. But to matters more serious now. Ukraine and Russia have agreed to a 12-hour ceasefire from today to allow civilians to escape through humanitarian corridors in many of Ukraine's worst-hit cities.
Yeah, some 5,000 people were successfully evacuated from Sumy yesterday after days of fierce Russian shelling, but many are weary of the new ceasefire as previous evacuation attempts were not as successful.
Well, on Sunday, a mother was killed along with her 18-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter as they tried to flee Kiev after Russian artillery rained on the family despite a ceasefire being in order. Well, joining us now in Poland to tell us what the next step may look like for the refugees fleeing Ukraine is our very own reporter, Bradley Harris, who is in Midday in Poland along the Ukrainian border. Bradley, thank you very much. How are you, first and foremost?
Yeah, I'm okay, I'm safe and I'm well, as is my team around me. It is very, very cold at the moment, Patrick. It's around about -6 at the minute, and that's going to double in the next few days. I'm currently at the busiest border crossing in Poland, that's Midday. And 48 hours ago, when I came here, there was still a hive of activity, lots of Ukrainian refugees coming across that border from Ukraine into Poland. But now things have started to heat up in terms of the operation from the Polish people and also from people from all over the country, people in Spain, people from America, from China, all coming here to Midday to help. This is a wooden shelter that is being erected to provide warmth to Ukrainians as they cross the border, because it is bitterly cold at the moment. We know that more than 2 million people have fled Ukraine since the war began 2 weeks ago. Most of those are headed towards Poland. That's over 1.2 million now have actually arrived in Poland. But when they get here across the border, for example here in Midday, the journey doesn't stop there. They actually get on a bus and they're coming every 5 minutes free of charge. They get taken to other parts. Rzeszów is another area where they can then board trains, again free of charge, and at stations they're currently being converted into spots for food, to give children nappies and animals some food as well, because of course for many many people, I've realised, they're coming with dogs, with animals. Right behind me, there are refugees from Ukraine coming now. Children, older people, younger people arriving. Here is a child with a bag of coffee, a bag of sweets, and the gloves you see them wearing, that's actually gloves that are being given by Polish police, believe it or not. Police are holding bags of gloves. They've swapped their guns for gloves, and they are offering them to children, Ukrainian children crossing the border. So one sense that I'm getting over the last 48 hours is a sense of support, a sense of humanity from not just Polish people, but from people all over the world here in Medyka.
Bradley, look, thank you very much for bringing us the latest there. Gosh, bless that little girl that you can see there waving at the camera. It really does bring it home, I think, doesn't it? Bradley Harris, who will be going to cut the show throughout the day there on the Polish-Ukrainian border. Yeah, quite moving, really, isn't it, just to see the actual faces.
I mean, it's hard to really imagine just having your life completely turned upside down in a space of 2 weeks. You know, many families that were visiting loved ones, that were going to work, now finding themselves, you know, on a border of another country trying to find safe haven.
It shows you how quickly life can change, doesn't it, really? Well, the Home Affairs Committee is taking evidence from the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK on the UK's response to the Ukrainian refugee crisis. We may well be going to that a little bit later on, but before that, I think we'll just dip into the inbox, shall we? GBViews at gbnews.uk. Lots about Bercow. You'll love to see it. And here we go. So, there we are. Yes, right, OK. What Peter wants to know is how this was allowed to go on for 10 years or so. So this is the thing, isn't it? And it's one of these interesting questions about Bercow, because he was kind of hiding in plain sight, really. I think people, if you speak to anyone around Parliament, it wasn't a massively popular figure, and I don't think it was a massive shock to anyone that it's come out that he was essentially a bully. So it's the fact that it was allowed to go on, and at the taxpayers' expense.
Yeah, I mean, there was an interesting point made by Ashley Frawley on Dube's show yesterday, which I thought was very interesting, which was arguing that while she's no fan of John Bercow, there is an expansion seemingly within society of the accusation of bullying, and sometimes it can be used as a kind of political weapon. I mean, some people have argued that in relation to the claims of bullying by Priti Patel as well. Yeah. So I think sometimes, you know, you also have to consider the other side of the argument. He says that it was it's politically motivated. We don't know about that. But
well, it's hard to be politically motivated when you don't know what his politics are these days, isn't it? You know, goes from a Conservative guy. Apparently, he was in the Monday Club when he was at university, which is, I mean, pretty right wing. It's fair to say, like, very right wing. And then he goes and joins the Labour Party.
It's Brexit. Brexit just seemed to send some people completely insane.
Completely.
I mean, there were other MPs that in the Conservative Party that were widely known for a long time to be very on the hard right, so to speak, who ended up, you know, joining the Liberal Democrats and so on. And then embracing that particular worldview. So, yeah, Brexit seemed to be the turning point for a lot of people in their political alignment.
Yes. And Mike says he's pleased that, in his view, Bercow's got his comeuppance. And there we are. We will, of course, be speaking to Andrew Bridgen a little bit later on.
Did you think he was a good speaker before Brexit?
No. Well,
because that's the thing. He was quite performative. There was a video of him speaking to an Italian TV show, and he did order in an Italian voice.
Yeah, I think he loves himself, doesn't he? He just loves himself. You could just see him.
Maybe I'm being too generous.
Passing the time in the mirror. That's his favourite hobby, one would imagine, you know. Just there he goes. He loses several hours. Sorry, John. John walks into the bathroom, comes out 3 hours later. He's just blacked out, having looked at himself for so long. No, it was very much the John Bercow show, wasn't it, I felt? And actually, that's the desecration of what Parliament is there to be.
But he was completely biased when it came to Brexit. You're a speaker that's meant to be neutral and impartial, and he consistently allowed those that were trying to overturn a democratic vote.
Yeah, there was quite a funny incident. It was one of the many times that John Bercow had basically tried to block some government legislation, and he thought he'd be all in the headlines and that everyone would want him. And apparently, allegedly, he then walked around the parliamentary estate, he was outside of it, took a long stroll, deliberately hoping to be courted by someone in the press. And apparently the only person who walked up to him from the press asked him why he'd taken a deliberately long route around. So there you go. Anyway, right, after the break, we'll be speaking to Conservative MP Andrew Bridgen, there we go, about that Bercow story. But first, it's your weather.
Good morning. It's a windy day today, with severe gales for a time towards the northwest, some heavy rain here, brighter and drier further east. However, with high pressure routed across Central Europe, any weather systems coming in from the Atlantic just grind to a halt across the UK at the moment, with some stronger winds covering much of the country. But this rain will be slow moving towards the northwest with some high rainfall totals through the day. So you can see where the rain is. Severe gales for a time associated with those heavy pulses, some damaging gusts across the western side of Scotland. Elsewhere, the cloud will break at times across England, even eastern Scotland. See some sunshine across eastern counties before the rain just nudges in across West Wales as well as the West Country, and it will persist across Northern Ireland as well as Western Scotland with snow over the higher ground above around 300 metres. Highest temperatures towards the southeast, 12 to 14 degrees Celsius, not feeling too bad if you can escape the wind. Now, through the evening and overnight, this rain nudges across towards northern counties of England. The Midlands seeing certainly some rain for the West Country as well as Wales, extending towards Aberdeenshire. It will turn colder towards the northwest of the country, so certainly for Northern Ireland and the northwest of Scotland, we'll see a frost here and some clearer skies to start the day across eastern counties of England. Even some sunshine as we head through Thursday. But this slow-moving weather front, where we've lost the intensity of the rain, still some patches of wet weather to come. Central parts of Scotland down towards the Midlands, even Wales, but some brighter skies emerging later towards the southwest, central southern England, seeing some brighter weather to end of the day. Not as windy on Thursday, and temperatures still double figures away from the northwest. Not a bad day to be out and about if you can escape that clouds and rain across the central spine of the country. And here's your outlook through the latter part of the week. Turning windy yet again with some rain on Friday, showery bursts of rain with some gales towards the southwest as we head into the weekend. Bye-bye for now.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, well, good morning, everybody. It is 10:24. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Folarin-Iman on GB News, live on your TV, radio and online this morning.
Yes, well, the former Speaker of the House of Commons, John Bercow, has been banned from holding a Parliament pass for life.
Looking for the tissues, sorry, I'm very upset about this.
After an independent report accused him of being a serial bully and a serial liar and rude and threatening towards staff. He has also been suspended from the Labour Party.
Now, Bercow, who is the longest-serving Speaker since 1943, has not only denied the allegations against him, but also denounced the report as a travesty of justice and a protracted, amateurish and unjust process. Well, joining us now to discuss this further is the one and only Andrew Bridgen, Conservative MP for North West Leicestershire, who had a few sparring matches with John Bercow over the time. Andrew, a sad day, a sad loss to British politics and indeed the parliamentary estate, John Bercow.
I'm not sure that anybody who experienced John Bercow in the chair of the Chamber of the House of Commons would necessarily agree with that. Certainly not the majority on the Conservative benches, Patrick. Well, I think when you see the way he treated elected members of Parliament in the Chamber, how he treated members of Her Majesty's government on the front bench, and now we're seeing the way that he treated staff and servants of the House. And I would say that the people who work in Parliament who aren't elected, who make Parliament run for the benefit of the country, I mean, they do a fantastic job, from the cleaners, the caterers, the security staff to the clerks. They are some of the best intentioned people I've ever met, and to abuse those sort of people from a position of power, I think is unforgivable. And the reports doesn't make happy reading for anybody. And the fact is, it went on for years and years and years and was never stopped.
Yeah, well, that's the question that a lot of people in my inbox are asking right now, Andrew. How was this allowed to go on for so long? Because it almost like he was hiding in plain sight. And, let's be honest, he cost the taxpayer a pretty penny as well. So he and his long-term devoted wife, Sally, could have a really nice flat.
Indeed, I think there'll be some more revelations about those matters to come. And also, as far as I'm concerned, one of the reasons I had a big run-in with him, he was protecting Keith Vaz prior to the cocaine and rent boys scandal, which again brought Parliament into disrepute. And he was defending him right till his last day in the chamber, where we had the Keith Vaz Parliamentary Standards report. And I had a sort of fracas with him on his last day, and it was clear that he was very, very biased throughout his tenure. He was not politically impartial, certainly not where Brexit was concerned, and certainly not about, I would say, bending the rules, breaking procedures to protect his friends in Parliament.
Will he be hurting now, do you think? He says, oh, it's all right, I can still get in with someone else, a friend with a pass will let me in. But, I mean, this was his life, wasn't it? He was part of the fabric of this place, and now, frankly, he's almost been expelled from it.
Well, he has been. If he was sitting MP, they would have a censure motion to expel him from the House. He can't have a former member's pass. He certainly won't be going to the House of Lords anytime soon, certainly not under this government. And I don't think he'd get through the vetting procedure, even if the Labour Party decided to recommend him. Well, I think justice is being served. I mean, karma can be, it's a bit of a devil for them, isn't it, really, karma at the end of the day.
Yes. And do you think some of the people that have been defending him over the last few years, we've seen Gary Lineker, David Lammy, James O'Brien, Dawn Butler and so on, do they have a bit of egg on their face?
Absolutely, and they should be reminded of all the things they defended him from. I mean, I seem to remember that during the Brexit debate, a Labour member said, well, yes, we know he's got these faults and he's probably a bully, but we need him for Brexit. Well, we didn't need him. He rode a coach and horses through standing orders, brought our democracy, I believe, into disrepute, and it was a damn close run thing that we managed to get him out and get Brexit done in the end.
Yeah, indeed. And what does the Labour Party do now, really? Because obviously, now that they're not just colleagues, they're comrades. And as he was at pains to say during the Labour Party conference, comrades always stick together, don't they?
They do, and he certainly stuck together with his comrades. It's interesting that Keith Vaz, following the cocaine and rent boys scandal, was then also found by the independent panel to have partaken in bullying and harassment of staff, forcing them out of their jobs effectively in the House of Commons. But John Bercow has been now quite rightly suspended from the Labour Party pending an investigation, but Keith Vaz, I say, despite the cocaine and rent boys scandal and a report by Parliament that he was bullying and harassing, exactly the same as John Bercow, where Vaz has also been banned from ever having a former member's pass, he's still a member of the Labour Party, very active, running campaigns in Leicester East in anticipation of a by-election there. And also, colleagues tell me they saw him on the doorsteps in Erdington.
Oh, in fact, well, absolutely. Yes, I suppose if you're judged by the company that you keep, then that's pretty poor judgment on his part, isn't it? Andrew, thank you very much for your time. And I suppose now you've got very little chance of bumping into the dumpy despot at any moment going forward now. So it's a good day, I suppose.
Well, if...
Go Go on.
If he does get some member to let him in or comes in as a visitor, he won't be stopping in long if I see him. Let's put it that way, Patrick.
Fair enough. Just quickly, actually, sorry, Andrew, while we've got you, Zelenskyy spoke yesterday, didn't he, in the House of Commons? A rapturous ovation. There we are. We can see it on our screens now. Standing ovation, everybody clapping, everybody cheering, etc., etc. What do you actually make of it in person?
I think it was absolutely moving. A man who's dedicated to his people and his country, the highest standards of parliamentary behaviour. I mean, a man who's willing to, with the price on his head by Putin's criminals, he's willing to lay down his life for his country. I don't know what more you can do of public service than have someone leading a country like the Ukraine in a crisis. And I quite honestly, if he weren't there, or if the assassins had been successful in the first couple of days of the invasion, I don't think Ukraine would be resisting, and I think they're winning now. And I think we should give them every bit of support we possibly can. We have to look after those who are fleeing the country. But I've got no doubt that they're mostly women and children. Their partners are fighting on the front line, and they will want to go back, and I want them to have a Ukraine to go back. And we also got to commit, Patrick, that we're going to help Ukraine rebuild after this, a bigger, stronger, more successful Ukraine, because they can be great partners for us. And I think their spirit is absolutely admirable.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. I couldn't agree more. Andrew Bridgen, thank you very, very much. Conservative MP for North West Leicestershire. What do you make of all of that?
Yeah, and I mean, he made history, Zelenskyy, the first foreign leader to address the House of Commons ever. I mean, that is remarkable, and his courage and his references as well, to Churchill and so on, really moved people, and that is incredible.
Do you think it's interesting because he was an actor, wasn't he?
Yeah, and a comedian.
And a comedian. And in that sense, I think he's very well placed to try to win these propaganda wars as well, and also as well to deliver things like that, to get the sense of theatre and all of that. But
Ronald Reagan, wasn't it?
Ronald Reagan, yeah. Classic, exactly. I was just about to come on to that. No, but this is.
Were you actually?
No, not really. No, but this is one of the things that I think actually is really important. He's got that kind of package, hasn't he? Really, I suppose. And anyway, it is.
Schwarzenegger as well, didn't he?
Schwarzenegger, yeah, he was the governor of California, wasn't he?
So there's a long history.
There is.
Of actors and people in that profession standing for politics.
Yeah, well, that's true, actually, as well. And Theresa May, for a while, acted as a semi-conservative Prime Minister. But anyway, there we go. Right, after the break, we'll be speaking to a former chief immigration officer with the UK Border Force about the government's proposals to deploy the Royal Navy to handle our channel crossings. But before that, let's look at this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 10:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, says his country has shown over the past 2 weeks it will not surrender to Russia. Residents in Kyiv this morning have been urged to get to bomb shelters as Ukrainian officials declared an air alert due to the threat of a missile attack. Well, Russian state media said troops would stop firing in the Ukrainian capital and 4 other cities today to let people evacuate. The UK Ministry of Defence says Russian troops have not made any significant breakthroughs as fighting continues to the northwest of the capital. 4 cities, though, are currently encircled by Russian forces and continue to suffer heavy shelling. Meanwhile, Ukrainian air defences have so far prevented Russian fighter jets from achieving any degree of control in the air. The Ukrainian government has banned the export of certain key food supplies as the country continues to defend itself from Russia. The export then of meat, salt, sugar and various grains have all been stopped. The United States has rejected Poland's offer to hand over fighter jets to a US base as part of a plan to provide aircraft to the Ukrainian armed forces. The Pentagon said the prospect of flying combat aircraft from NATO territory into the war zone raises serious concerns for the entire NATO alliance. The UK Foreign Secretary will today meet her US counterpart, Antony Blinken, in Washington to discuss what more the UK and America can do to support Ukraine. Ahead of the trip, Liz Truss declared the crisis a wake-up call for free democracies. Experts are warning sanctions on Russian oil will further increase prices at the petrol pump here. The UK is phasing out Russian oil by the end of the year. It's feared that will put an extra bit of pressure on the cost of living. You're now up to date on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Shortly, we'll be back to the point.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 10:37. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin-Iman, and Patrick Christys. We're live on your TV, online, and radio this morning.
Yes, we are indeed.
Right,
sorry, something really tickled me during the break, and now I can't get it out of my head. Right, OK. Moving on. So Border Force officers are preparing for what could be a massive wave of channel crossings as many attempt to escape the war in Ukraine and reach the UK.
Yes, over 28,000 people illegally crossed the channel in small boats last year, 3 times the amount in 2020. Now, Border Force unions are estimating that number could double this year. The government has planned to put the Royal Navy in charge of controlling the crossings, but The Guardian are now reporting that the House of Commons Defence Committee have doubts of the Navy's ability to do it.
Well, joining us now is Kevin Saunders, former Chief Immigration Officer for UK Border Force at Calais, so an expert in this field, of course. Is the Navy going to be able to stop it? Can it stop it?
Good morning. Well, what we need the Navy for is command and control. This is something that they are very, very good at, and that will help immensely if they can control exactly what we are doing in the Channel. That's the first step. The second step, I'm afraid, is for the politicians to get round the table and to sort out why the French won't do more to stop the crossings.
I mean, some of the reason for the wave that they are expecting is because of many people escaping the war in Ukraine. I mean, do you not think that we should be opening up other routes, humanitarian routes, or even perhaps moving the Border Force to closer locations so that people don't have to go all the way to Calais and so on? Is there other things that we can be doing just to prevent people having to make that journey to Calais in the first place?
I think what we've got to do first of all is to get rid of the myth that Border Force are dealing with visas. They're not. UK visas deal with the issue of visas for people coming to the UK. All Border Force do is to check the visas are genuine and the people can legally enter the UK. What we've got at the moment in Calais is we've got people who are arriving at the port on false documents, pretending to be Ukrainians when they're not. So this is one of the reasons that the government is setting up their visa centres to prevent this problem.
I mean, what can really be done? Because, I mean, we've had the Nationality and Borders Bill introduced by Priti Patel, which is meant to bring tougher measures in order to deal with this issue, but nothing seems to be making a significant dent on the numbers, which are predicted to actually only really go up.
Well, the numbers will go up until we've got the Borders and Nationality Bill on the statute book. Once we have the bill on the statute book and the government can do what the bill actually says, I suspect if we go to offshore reception centres, then the numbers will drop.
Do you think it's a bit unfortunate that potentially we've allowed in a lot of people who, well, I suppose, not really supposed to be here, potentially illegal, I suppose you could say, use a lot of resources in terms of hotels and expenditure, frankly, and now we're confronted with what looks very much like a humanitarian crisis, a huge-scale humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. Potentially, are we less well equipped to deal with it, do you think?
Right, well, it's two different situations. If you look at the pictures that you guys in the press had yesterday, we saw boats arriving on the shores of Kent full of young men, fit young men. There wasn't a single woman amongst them. Whereas if you look at the people coming from Ukraine, that is women and children and old people, genuine refugees who need our help. So it is a different situation. However, at the end of the day, at the present moment, we're spending £4.7 million a day on refugees coming across the Channel. That money's got to come from somewhere. So we're all going to pay for it with the NI increase next month.
Exactly, and that's the thing as well. I think will turn a lot of people off, and it's already getting people very angry. Anyway, Kevin, thank you. Kevin Saunders there, former Chief Immigration Officer for the UK Border Force at Calais, just discussing that latest story there.
Yes, well now, the UK has followed the US in banning Russian oil imports to punish Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. Although Prime Minister Boris Johnson assures us that the move will not affect UK businesses, the price of petrol has already seen its steepest weekly hike in 18 years.
Well, price is expected to keep rising to £2 a litre very soon, actually. So is this attempt to punish Putin really going to punish British motorists more? Our economics and business editor, the one and only Liam Halligan, joins us now. Gosh, do you think the public are at some point going to say, actually, let's just buy Russian oil again?
Look, these sanctions have a cost. I think most of us would agree that we need to stand up to Vladimir Putin's aggression after that invasion of Ukraine, but be in no doubt, we buy our oil and gas on global markets, and politicians can say, oh, we only rely on Russia for 5% of our gas, but we still buy our gas on global markets, and global markets are going nuts because of this war. And now, the tit-for-tat sanctions, if you like, the Americans are banning exports of Russian oil to America. We're phasing out exports of Russian oil to the UK and gas exports. The EU is a bit harder for them because 40% of their gas comes from Russia and 25% of their oil. But be in no doubt, this is now full-on economic war between Russia and the West. We're not going to see boots on the ground, but we are seeing an economic conflict, and that has blowback for ordinary households and firms in Britain.
I read a tweet just now. Lebanon has 1 month of wheat reserves left after the attack on the port of Beirut destroyed its silos, and wars in Syria and Ukraine and sanctions against Russia cut its main supply. So this is not just affecting people in the UK. This could also affect countries in the developing world.
And indeed food, as you said, Anara. It's not just about energy. Russia is an energy and an agricultural superpower. It's the world's biggest exporter of wheat. Again, people in the Commons are always telling me, oh, but it's a tiny economy, it's barely in the world's top 10. Yeah, denominated in dollars, denominated in oil, gas, wheat, foodstuffs, nickel, titanium, palladium, precious industrial metals that we need to keep our manufacturing going. It is one of the world's biggest economies. It's right up there. And we're now seeing food prices spiral across the world, wholesale food prices. You'll eventually feel that when you go to the supermarket or your corner shop. And the president of the World Bank, David Malpass, of course, the World Bank is focused on developing countries. He said this is a catastrophe for the global economy and a perfect storm for food prices. There are lots of people in developing countries around the world that are food importers who will have their economic security and even their food security marginalised because of this conflict.
I mean, I've heard some people arguing that this may well be the end of globalisation in some senses, because countries are now going to be looking at how they can make themselves much more self-sufficient. I mean, do you think that's perhaps wishful thinking, so to speak, or is that something that we should be thinking about now? How do we radically become self-sufficient as a society in order to prevent situations like this where we are so interdependent that actually sanctions against despotic regimes massively harms us as well?
Well, I'm a bit longer in the tooth than you guys, and in my experience, history doesn't happen in blocks, it happens in waves and cycles. They say history repeats. I didn't expect the whole of the 20th century in 2 weeks. It's what we seem to be going through at the moment. Yes, there will be some reversal of the incredible integration we've had over recent years since the fall of the Berlin Wall in the late 1980s. You know, the Russian economy is far more integrated with the world than the Soviet Union ever was. And while businesses want to distance themselves from Russia now, we will remain economically integrated once this awful military conflagration is over. So I don't think there's going to be an end to globalisation, though I think we'll ease off a little bit. You know, there was a political scientist called Francis Fukuyama who in 1999, as we've discussed tonight, said, oh, this is the end of history. I don't think you're right, Francis. This is actually history on speed.
Absolutely.
Fantastic stuff, Liam. Great to have you, as always. You'll be on later, won't you? What time? Fill us in.
1 o'clock, and
you're on the money. Good stuff. We love it. Right, our economics and business to Liam Halligan there.
Cheers, guys.
Good stuff, mate. All right. Well, look, with the cost of living continuing to rise, fresh fruit and veg are now also feeling the effects of unstable markets.
This is even playing out in everyday products that we may have thought safe. Fish and chips, for example, are now amongst the ever-growing list of foods that's likely to see prices increase. Our Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie has more.
Early morning in a Belfast veg market sees lorries being loaded with product that is rising in price. Brian Dean is the sales manager for the North Down Group and points to numerous factors.
This rising costs started with Brexit, the amount of extra administration we had to put towards the whole job. We now have 2 dedicated salaries just for the main paperwork exercises that's done on a daily basis. That on top of the rise in fuel costs, packaging costs, the cost of labour, the cost of fertiliser, our growers are seeing increasing costs, and all that inevitably gets added on to the end user.
Access to fresh food is a must in any modern economy. And David Kerr is a retailer that travels from Kirkcudbright on a daily basis and has noticed families' spending patterns changing to try and make money go further.
Rather than buying a 2-kilo bag, they're coming in now and buying a 20-kilo bag or a 10-kilo bag to hopefully last longer. They're spending their budget more wisely.
Brian Dean says a stronger pound is helping with purchasing power from the EU, but that could go either way.
We are benefiting at the minute. Obviously, the euro and pound exchange rate's good. It's good for us buying stuff on the continent. You know, so that's what's keeping the cost down slightly. But it just takes the euro and pound to change, and then again, your landed cost is going to increase.
Potatoes is a big part of British life, and fish and chips is probably the best loved product from them. Trevor McBride has owned his chip shop for 28 years and sees real financial pressures on the industry and points to taxes and wages that are due to rise in April.
I'm here 28 years. The Golden Chip has been here over 40 years. And no, I have never seen as bad an outlook as far as expenses is concerned. We're facing it every day. Everything's gone up. And we're looking at April with the VAT going back up again to 20%. And that goes on to all our food, everything that's heated. There'll be 20% of VAT to be paid from that. And minimum wage going up, living wage and so on. They need that to go up for to be able to survive. But no, I have never seen as poor an outlook in 28 years, no.
Got this. Prices may go up, but the taste never changes. Dougie Beattie, GB News, Belfast.
Well,
Lovely ending
Northern
there.
Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie. I mean, on GB News, we've been talking about the cost of living for months now, and now with the sanctions against Russia, this is only going to get higher. What are politicians and political leaders going to do about it? Because I'm really worried that, and I think you mentioned this last week, Patrick, that some families just literally cannot afford it.
No.
What happens when you cannot afford to buy food, when you cannot afford to pay your energy bills? We cannot leave ordinary people in that kind of situation.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, anyway, let's take you through some of the headlines of the day that you might have missed, OK? So this is a good one, actually. Love this one. There's a ship called Endurance, the wooden ship used by Sir Ernest Shackleton to sail from Norway to the Antarctic in 1912. Well, it's been discovered at the bottom of the Weddell Sea 107 years after it sank.
Yes, this is quite a story. An expedition to find the ship was launched in February of this year. Dr. John Shears, the expedition leader, said his team had made polar history by completing what he called the world's most challenging shipwreck search in freezing waters off Antarctica. The shipwreck, now designated as a protected historic site and monument under the Antarctic Treaty, was found in what the discoverers called remarkably good condition. Wow.
How cool is that?
I mean, it's phenomenal. We love a bit of archaeology, a bit of history.
Yeah, but I just think it's
discovery.
It is that. It's all of those things rolled into one, isn't it? And to see it there, it's like there's something quite morbidly fascinating about shipwrecks as well. It's not believed. I don't think that anyone's actually there are any bodies on that at all. It was just it got crushed by the sea ice, and they had to get off it, didn't they? In smaller boats or just across the ice. And I mean, just look at those images there. It's I'd be desperate to try and get on board that, get inside it.
Yeah, I mean, for those listening on radio, what we're seeing is a ship that looks remarkably intact, submerged under the sea, and it's over 100 years old. I mean, it's
incredible.
Yeah,
I just think it's just like it's like history frozen in time, isn't it, down there? But anyway, moving on now. Nature appears to be adapting to humans' intelligence.
Humans.
Negligence? Oh, negligence. Yes, OK, sorry. Human intelligence. That would thought it make sense. Negligence towards the environment after scientists photographed octopi using garbage in the ocean as shelters.
Is that plural of octopus?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Octopi. I learned something new.
There you go. Anyway, you can read the rest of it.
The highly intelligent creatures have utilised bottles, cans and even batteries as makeshift nets to lay their eggs in.
See, there you go. So pollution's a good thing.
I won't get that far. Well, you know, we're now seeing an octopus that is... I'm not really entirely sure what it's doing. It seems to be...
sheltering in some kind of plastic container, I suppose, or...
Well, that's a bit sad, actually. I don't know how I'm meant to feel about that. Am I meant to see that this is a remarkable example
it's chosen to live
of
there,
evolution?
isn't it? Well, it's chosen to live there, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, but I worry about the microplastics. That could be quite damaging.
Well, that's true, but apparently they're already essentially in every single fish that we eat at the moment anyway. So, I mean, it's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it, really? But,
The octopi seem to show a preference for unbroken items as well as dark or opaque containers. While the pictures may be cute, scientists studying the eight-legged animals underline the health risk of using rubbish instead of seashells. Well, that's what I was...
Exactly. There we go. Well, we'll move away from that now to one of my favourite things in the world, actually, pork pies. Pork pies, jellied eels and black pudding. What do they all have in common? Well, apparently, nobody wants to eat them anymore. That's a lie. That is fake news, OK? I'm all over those things.
In fact, many of the staple British dishes of the old days are at risk of extinction.
No, they're not.
With a new report suggesting we may be living through the final generation of the pork pie.
Absolutely not. Don't believe everything you hear on the news, people. I'm telling you, don't believe everything. I will personally see to it in the same way that as soon as my firstborn child pops out of the womb, they're going to get caught in a Manchester United shirt, and they'll learn to love...
No baby milk, just pork pies.
They'll learn to love pork pies, yeah.
Well, I think everything seems to be blamed on my generation. Gen Z, Zoomers...
Are you Gen Z? What am I?
You're millennial.
What's the cross? What's the crossover?
1996, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gen
I don't want to be a Gen Z anyway. You
may be to blame. The report says most of them have never tried gelled eels. A third have never tried black pudding. And nearly half of those aged 19 to 30 admitted most British dishes sounded old-fashioned and strange. I love a bit of black pudding.
Yeah.
Haggis.
Haggis is good.
Missing out.
I had haggis last week. I've got a bit of a thing for haggis now, actually.
Oh, it's good.
It's good stuff. I mean, terrible for the arteries, but great for everything else.
The survey was conducted by a company called Sushi Daily. who concluded that old, unhealthy, stodgy
I think
dishes
they've
were
got some
being
skin in the game
replaced
there,
with
haven't they?
more exactly modern, healthy options, including sushi and sashimi.
Well, what a remarkable survey that was then, wasn't it? It's like the Labour Party have carried out a survey showing that the Labour Party are the most popular party in Britain. Like, OK, all right, come on in. Anyway, right, keep all your thoughts coming in to us on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we're just going to go and find one or two of them just before we do indeed throw over to the news. Bercow's still doing the rounds in my inbox, of course. Bercow, someone wants a statue to John Bercow, but with a plaque next to it announcing that he's a bully.
Well, keep all your thoughts coming.
Allegations Bercow denies.
And we'll be getting to more of those
very shortly. Yes, we will. All right, well, now I think we should probably just do the news, shall we? Let's do the news. Oh, it's weather. Let's do the weather. Chaos.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGiven. A fine day to come in the east with some sunshine, but wet in the west, especially western Scotland and Northern Ireland, and increasingly windy, particularly in the northwest, ahead of a weather front which is moving in very slowly from the Atlantic. The isobars squeezing together ahead of that front with the risk of gales or even severe gales during the morning across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. But those winds do ease as the front moves through. It's a slow-moving front, but it gives some heavy rain for western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and then eventually that rain pushing into Wales and the southwest. A blustery day for most, but actually that wind coming from the south means that for central and eastern England it's sunny skies and mild, 12 to 14 Celsius, but it turns colder for Scotland and Northern Ireland behind the front, and the rain falls as snow for a time across the Grampians and Highlands above 400 metres during the afternoon and evening. As we head through the night, a lot of cloud remains and the rain tends to peter out. It becomes lighter and more patchy, still mostly affecting western parts of the country. Clear spells ahead, but mild, 7 to 10 Celsius. Colder behind the front, northern western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, seeing a touch of frost to start the day on Thursday. Then Thursday brings with it a lot of cloud cover, further spells of mainly light rain for Scotland, northern England, and later on perhaps for southern and central England as well. But Wales, the southwest, East Anglia and the southeast sees sunny spells, and it's going to be mild once again, 14 Celsius in London, 9 or 10 for Belfast and Glasgow. Into the start of Thursday evening, and clear spells for a time for Scotland, for the southeast as well. A lot of cloud elsewhere, showers increasingly pushing north, and then this more coherent band of rain moving in for Friday, so another unsettled day with spells of rain and wind to come, and the weekend looks similar. Bye-bye.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Anaya Flanagan on your TV, radio and online. We're here all the way through until midday with a show stacked full of all the biggest stories, expert guests and plenty of opinions.
Absolutely. Well, make sure they get in touch with your views as usual. GB Views at gbnews.uk. We'll be getting to those throughout the show. But first, here's the latest news.
Good morning, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Now, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says his country has shown it will not surrender to Russia. Residents in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, this morning are being urged to get to bomb shelters as officials declare the threat of a missile attack. The UK Ministry of Defence says Russian troops have not made any significant breakthroughs as fighting does continue to the northwest of the capital. However, 4 cities are currently encircled by Russian forces and continue to suffer heavy shelling. Meanwhile, though, in the air, Ukrainian air defences have prevented Russian fighter jets from achieving any degree of control. Russia has said its troops will stop firing on the capital, along with 4 other cities, to let civilians evacuate today. Sumi's regional governor says the humanitarian corridor in his city will continue after 5,000 civilians were evacuated yesterday. Yulia Gritsenko escaped Kyiv and now is in the Lviv region. She says some Ukrainians are spending most of their days in bomb shelters.
In the other regions, the situation is quite grave now. People are sitting in the shelters from almost all day, and why there are no many footages from citizen journalists and so on. It's just because not always you can go out and take some pictures because you just may die.
Ukraine's ambassador to the UK said his officials would help deal with refugees if the visa rules were lifted. The Transport Secretary says 760 visas have been granted so far for Ukrainians coming to the UK. Grant Shapps told GB News checks must remain in place.
It takes a bit of time to sort of crank up the system to make sure that we have visas and checks in place. Your viewers will understand we do need to check who is coming here for obvious reasons. But we've cranked up from just 800 appointments a day to 6,000 available.
Experts are warning that sanctions on Russian oil will further increase petrol prices here in the UK. The UK is planning on phasing out Russian oil by the end of this year. It's feared, though, that will put extra pressure on the cost of living. America says it's also going to ban gas imports, with the US President Joe Biden claiming it will be a powerful blow to Russia's economy. Ukraine's president thanked America for the decision to ban Russian oil imports.
For all the evil, America bans imports of oil from Russia, petroleum products, gas, coal, prohibits US citizens from any investment in Russia's fuel and energy sector. I'm grateful personally to President Biden of the United States for this decision, for this leadership, for this most powerful signal to the whole world. It is simple. Every penny paid to Russia turns into bullets and projectiles that fly to other sovereign states.
A spokesperson for China's foreign ministry has criticised the US for imposing sanctions.
China resolutely opposes any form of unilateral sanctions and restrictions imposed by the US. The US should earnestly and seriously approach China's concerns when handling the Ukraine issue and its relations with Russia. It should not in any way hurt China's rights and interests.
The United States has rejected Poland's offer to hand over fighter jets to a US base as part of plans to provide aircraft to the Ukrainian armed forces. The Pentagon said the prospect of flying combat aircraft from NATO territory into the war zone raises serious concerns for the entire NATO alliance. Russia's defence ministry has warned that countries offering airfields to Ukraine for attacks on Russia may be considered as having entered the conflict. Meanwhile, the government has announced that it's a criminal offence now for any Russian aircraft to enter UK space. The UK Foreign Secretary will meet her US counterpart, Antony Blinken, in Washington to discuss what more the UK and America can do to support Ukraine. Ahead of the trip, Liz Truss declared the crisis a wake-up call for free democracies. In some other news now, police investigating the murder of Alan Wilson, who was shot on his doorstep 17 years ago, they've issued a revised description of his suspected killer. Mr Wilson was fatally shot in 2004 after a man called at his family home in the Highlands. Following further reviews of witness accounts and timings from the night in question, Scotland police believe the gunman may have been now a lot younger than they initially thought. The ancient wreck of Endurance has been found on the bottom of the sea in Antarctica. Sir Ernest Shackleton's ship was discovered over 3,000 metres down. It's the first glimpse of the famous vessel since it was crushed by ice and sank on its fateful expedition in 1915. You're now up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Let's head, though, back now to the point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin-Iman and Patrick Christys on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up for you in our final hour, so here's what's on the menu.
Yeah, well, the latest on the refugee crisis in Ukraine as thousands more continue to flee the country. Our reporter Bradley Harris is on the ground at the Ukraine-Poland border. We'll go to him.
Yes, we'll look back at Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's address to Parliament yesterday and examine whether it will have any effect on Prime Minister's questions at midday.
Greg Swenson of Republicans Overseas UK will be here and we'll be asking him whether he thinks that US President Biden is fulfilling his role as leader of the West in the standoff with President Vladimir Putin. Or would Trump be a better leader?
And finally, as he drives back from the Ukrainian border, lorry boss Philip Judge will give his thoughts on the UK's ban on Russian oil. Will it actually affect Russia, or will it just make Brits suffer from higher petrol prices?
Yeah, we've got all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. You can get in touch with your views, as usual, on GB Views at gbnews.uk. Don't be shy.
Ukraine and Russia have agreed to a 12-hour ceasefire from today to allow civilians to escape through humanitarian corridors in many of Ukraine's worst-hit cities.
Some 5,000 people were successfully evacuated from Sumy yesterday after days of fierce Russian shelling. But many are wary of the new ceasefire as previous evacuation attempts were not as successful.
Well, joining us now in Poland to tell us what the next step may look like for the refugees fleeing Ukraine is our reporter Bradley Harris, who is in Midday in Poland along the Ukrainian border. Bradley, please tell us more.
Yeah, this is the main border crossing into Poland. More than 2 million people have fled Ukraine, most of those into Poland, and still hundreds of people are pouring through the border into Poland, into Midday, where I'm standing now. One of those people who has just come through the border is Valerie. You've come from Ukraine.
Yeah.
Tell me, how was your journey?
It was a difficult journey, obviously, because I'm from Mykolaiv. It's on the south of Ukraine, and it's really difficult to find the transport to go to Odessa, from where it is possible to go to Lviv, because our railroad in Mykolaiv was bombed, so we were cut off from this railway road, and thanks to Red Cross we managed this journey. It was difficult, of course, because there was not enough space and place for each person, comfortable place, but we all wanted to get to safety, so the comfort wasn't our priority. It was to get to safety.
Valerie, tell me, what has it been like living in a war?
I have to tell that I've never thought that I'll have to say that I lived through the war, because there were bombing in our districts with civilians, with no military objects and facilities, like some people say. And to sit in the bathroom when you hear the air alarm, and to worry if you live into the next day, into the next hour, and to have to be brave for your mom who is far away. It is kind of difficult and emotionally exhausting.
You're here on your own. Where is your family? Where's your mother?
My mom works here in Poland, so it was obvious choice for me. And right now I'm heading to her. She's waiting for me.
When you came through the border after that long journey, just tell me what was being said to you, who was talking to you, what support have you received?
It wasn't a border, probably. It was when I came to Lviv, where there's huge support for those fleeing their native cities. There was a lot of food, warm food, because it's really cold these days. And their smiling faces, they try to support us, to show that they care. And food for us Ukrainians, it is like cherry on the top to show this support. It's like caring. Here, normal people, average people, they just see that you need help. I have 3 bags and only 2 hands, and people saw this and they helped me. So I'm really grateful for this.
Valerie, I'm so glad you can make it here into Poland, away from the conflict. People have been helping you with bags, and also your cat as well, yes. Called Smokey, who is safe in the corner. Lovely to chat to you. It's really interesting, isn't it, to hear people's thoughts on how they have been experiencing this conflict in Ukraine, but also their journey to flee it and their result here in Poland and where they go next.
Brilliant stuff, Bradley. Thank you very much, and good luck to you as well out there. I mean, it's an incredible journey that's being made by so many people, isn't it, just to get to safety. Bradley Harris there, reporting live from the Ukrainian-Polish border. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy gave a historic address to Parliament last night. In his speech, he channelled Great Britain's Winston Churchill as he urged members of Parliament to do more to help Ukrainians against Russia.
So what was the reaction to the address, and what impact will it have on politicians here? Doctor, let's see.
I think we can see a bit of the speech, can't we? Yeah, hear a bit of the speech.
I would like to remind you the words that the United Kingdom have already heard, which are important again. We will not give up and we will not lose. We will fight till the end at sea, in the air. We will fight in the forests, in the fields, on the shores, in the streets.
Yes, that was Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Well, now Dr. Alan Mendoza, the founder and executive director of the Henry Jackson Society, joins us now. Firstly, Dr. Alan Mendoza, what did you make of the speech by the Ukrainian president?
Well, I think it was a very strong speech. I mean, he knew his audience well. He had the Churchillian rhetoric ready, but it was a great symbol as well, basically. I mean, there was the entire House of Commons sitting there with their headphones on, with their Ukrainian flag, kind of pins. It was a very strong message both ways. Firstly, his messaging to the UK. Secondly, of course, our, if you like, rapt attention, the interest level, and of course the reaction to that, at least initially, entirely positive. So I think it couldn't have gone better from the perspective of Zelenskyy, and of course, indeed, from the perspective of where Britain is today on the Ukraine crisis.
But Dr. Mendoza, will it change anything? I mean, we've still ruled out a no-fly zone, which Volodymyr Zelenskyy would like, and we've now got the Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday. Do you think today? Do you think it was actually going to change anything?
I hate to say it, but no. The UK government has sort of established its lines so far. It is continuing to obviously work on the diplomatic isolation of Russia, on the financial isolation of Russia. We are seeing, kind of new measures being brought in almost daily on that score. But frustratingly, we're not seeing, of course, any action really to help tip the military balance towards the Ukrainians. And the latest, of course, is that the US administration has essentially vetoed the Polish plan to send MiGs over to to surplus MiGs over to Ukraine. And let's be realistic, we can do all we can from the outside to try and do medium-term damage to the Russian aggression that's happened. But the Ukrainians need help now in order to address that balance on the ground. If they don't get it, ultimately, Putin shows no signs of stopping. And I fear we will see much more death and destruction because he will just be allowed to continue.
Well, the economic sanctions are certainly beginning to bite, not just in Russia, but also in the UK. We've been discussing the cost of living crisis and the impact on the sanctions that might have here. I mean, do you worry that, as this seeps in further, these sanctions, and it affects the global economy and nations within the Western societies themselves, that there's going to be less resolve to actually continue pushing against Russia?
It's certainly possible, but I hope that two things might happen. Firstly, of course, that people realise, as they have to this point, that our freedoms are precious and require active intervention on our part to stop them, and that sometimes that intervention is not cost-free. So I think people genuinely understand, of course, that this is a direct challenge to us, what Vladimir Putin has done in Ukraine, that we can't just sit back and allow him to get away with it. And unfortunately, that may have some economic cost attached to it, but it's still the right thing to do. But secondly, it's entirely possible, of course, that the government, seeing it has managed to dramatically intervene in markets for the last 2 years, might decide to do something. Collectively in the West, we ought to be looking at some way we can defray this huge energy cost rise, which we know is being sparked by this conflict, which we know is being sparked by Vladimir Putin's actions, and which we can almost certainly do something economically about, should we be so minded to do so.
Do you think actually there's any chance of there being too much idolisation of Zelenskyy? Do you think there's any chance of that, or do you think actually that he's thoroughly deserving of all of this adulation?
Oh no, he's thoroughly deserving of it. I mean, this was somebody who was widely deemed in Ukraine not to be up to the job before the conflict. I mean, you saw his opinion poll ratings, they were pretty dismal. People didn't think he had a good handle on issues, and this has become his moment. He has single-handedly channeled, if you like, the spirit of Ukraine through him, which is exactly what you want from your wartime leader. And I think, Zelenskyy is absolutely deserving of the praise that he's received. But of course, he's not interested in praise. He's interested in saving his country from Russia. And that is ultimately how he will judge his success, not whether he's received some plaudits from us for his speeches.
Well, isn't that an important point, Dr. Mendoza, that in the kind of idealisation and this narrative building that has formed, justifiably so, in relation to defending Ukraine, that we may miss the reality of the conflict, which is, bloodshed and violence, and Russia is continuing to encroach on Ukrainian territory towards Kiev right now. And if we are saying that, we admire Zelenskyy, but we are not necessarily willing to back him as much as he may demand militarily, then isn't there a problem there? Are we really willing to do what he asks in order to defend his country?
Well, I think there's two things in this. Firstly, we are, kind of loudly and proudly saying Putin must fail, Putin must fail. Well, if you really believe Putin must fail, you have to do everything in your power, not 90% of things, but 100% of things to make that happen. However, that doesn't necessarily mean giving Zelenskyy what he would like. I mean, he would no doubt like to have our armies on the ground, fighting the war with him. That's never going to happen because ultimately, despite our admiration for what he's doing, there are practical reasons why it can't happen. But is there a gap between those two positions? Is there something that, are there areas that we can do much more in? The answer is definitely yes. We can supply more advanced weaponry to Ukraine. We can enforce a no-fly zone in at least part of the country where the Russians are not, and therefore there is no danger of running into them in the way that people fear should it be enacted across the whole country. Are we therefore at the full extent of what we're doing, short of doing what he wants? The answer is no. So there is clearly still space for us to progress in order to ensure that Putin must indeed fail.
Indeed. All right, Dr. Mendoza, thank you very, very much. The founder and executive director of the Henry Jackson Society, who was discussing, of course, the very latest there from Ukraine, how we can combat those extremism that's going on over there in the war, etc., etc., etc. Right, so let's delve back into my inbox, shall we? GBViews at gbnews.uk. Yeah, the Churchillian, this is from Helen, the Churchillian Volodymyr Zelenskyy address to Parliament was clearly written by the government. I think it was a staged spectacle to garner sympathy from the British public. Well, I suppose if it was, then it's worked, hasn't it? But I'm very much not sure it's...
Yes, and Richard Hill is worried that the war is going to make people think that prices are going up because of the war, and actually this is something that predates it, and that this is a convenient excuse perhaps for many politicians. Well, I think that is a fair point, that this is the cost of living crisis has been a long-standing problem, and we should not let politicians just say, oh, it's because of international conflict this is happening. No, there's policies that have failed over the last 10+ years.
Yeah, exactly. And just a lighter one to bring us into the end of this particular segment. Malcolm has been in touch. Never short of a joke or two is Malcolm. Thank you very much. Talking about our story that we did about octopuses, octopi, essentially using litter.
Octoport pie.
Oh, nice. She's here all week. She actually is. Using essentially rubbish for new homes and things like that. And Malcolm says, talking about the ongoing food crisis, when things get tough, we can just eat octopus at Christmas. It's a bit chewy, but at least everyone will get a leg. Thank you very much,
That links with my joke, octoport pie.
It does in a way, yeah. Right, after the break, we look at whether US President Joe Biden is fulfilling his role as leader of the free world in a fight against Putin, or whether Donald Trump will be doing a better job. But first, it's your weather.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGiven. A fine day to come in the east with some sunshine, but wet in the west, especially western Scotland and Northern Ireland, and increasingly windy, particularly in the northwest, ahead of a weather front which is moving in very slowly from the Atlantic. The isobars squeezing together ahead of that front with the risk of gales or even severe gales during the morning across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. But those winds do ease as the front moves through. It's a slow-moving front, but it gives some heavy rain for western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and then eventually that rain pushing into Wales and the southwest. A blustery day for most, but actually that wind coming from the south means that for central and eastern England it's sunny skies and mild 12 to 14 Celsius, but it turns colder for Scotland and Northern Ireland behind the front, and the rain falls as snow for a time across the Grampians and Highlands above 400 metres during the afternoon and evening. As we head through the night, a lot of cloud remains and the rain tends to peter out. It becomes lighter and more patchy, still mostly affecting western parts of the country. Clear spells ahead, but mild, 7 to 10 Celsius. Colder behind the front. Northern western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, seeing a touch of frost to start the day on Thursday. Then Thursday brings with it a lot of cloud cover, further spells of mainly light rain for Scotland, northern England, and later on perhaps for southern and central England as well. But Wales, the southwest, East Anglia and the southeast sees sunny spells, and it's going to be mild once again, 14 Celsius in London, 9 or 10 for Belfast and Glasgow. Into the start of Thursday evening, and clear spells for a time for Scotland, for the southeast as well. A lot of cloud elsewhere, showers increasingly pushing north, and then this more coherent band of rain moving in for Friday, so another unsettled day with spells of rain and wind to come, and the weekend looks similar. Bye-bye.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Yes, it's just about to go 11:26 right now. This is To The Point with me, Anaya Flaren Iman, and Patrick Christys on GB News. We're live on your TV, radio and online this morning.
Yes, we are. Now, US President Joe Biden has announced a ban on Russian energy imports to the US in his latest effort to curb Russian power. But upon hearing that, oil prices, of course, skyrocketed. Former President Donald Trump had a simple question to ask America. He said, "Do you miss me yet?" I suspect the answer is yes from a lot of people.
As we stare down the barrel of both a Ukrainian refugee crisis as well as an Afghani refugee crisis, after the US withdrew from the country last year, we can't help but wonder what the world would have looked like if Donald Trump was still in the White House. So joining us now in the studio is Greg Swenson, Chair of Republicans Overseas UK. Firstly, Greg, in 2018, President Trump did warn Germany about the pipeline between Russia and Germany, and also called upon our NATO allies to spend much more on defence. It seems that that is looking like the position that many people are now arguing for.
Yes, and the Germans actually flipped on both, and so that was good to see. And, granted, President Trump's, arguments and delivery, in that case, were very, very deliberate. He wasn't, this wasn't a rally where he was cheering and making up slogans about Angela Merkel or something. He had a very intelligent but strong discussion, and it's great to look at that clip again, here 3 years, 4 years later. But he was right, regardless of his delivery.
But Greg, there's another side to this. In February, The Guardian reported that Donald Trump said of Vladimir Putin was very savvy and called him a genius for moving troops into eastern Ukraine. So there is another side to many of Donald Trump's thoughts on Russia.
Yes, and I think, two things. One is, he's his own worst enemy sometimes. I thought those comments were a mistake, even if they're true in some respect. I think what he meant, I can't speak for President Trump, but, what he meant was that, we, the U.S., specifically Biden, made mistakes. Putin took advantage of them. That makes Putin smart. It's not suggesting he supports Putin, and I think 88% of Republicans and 88% of Democrats are very much against Putin. So, I thought those remarks were clumsy, but I think what he's saying is what we all know, that the Biden administration has projected weakness that's emboldened Putin, and whereas President Trump at the time was projecting strength, and that deterred Putin.
I find it very, very, very hard to watch Joe Biden, and actually, you can sit here and make light of it in a way, but I think maybe it's crossed that particular boundary now for me, actually, where it's quite unpleasant to watch him operate.
It's painful. I mean, I hate to watch speeches of people that I support. Sometimes, you hate to see, politicians make mistakes or look clumsy on stage. Biden, it's absolutely painful, and it's showing in the polls. I mean, we talk about, again, Trump, I didn't think his remarks were polite, but 62% of Americans think that Trump would have done a much better job, or that Putin would not have invaded if Trump was there. That's 40% of Democrats.
But why do you think that is? I mean, what exactly do you think that Donald Trump would have done differently?
Sure.
That would mean that Putin wouldn't have done?
I mean, it's a great question. I think there's two arguments. One is the macro issues, and then one are some specific things around Russia and Ukraine. The macro issues are obvious.
Yeah.
President Trump was very much for strengthening the military. In other words, peace through strength, which was very Reagan-esque. You know, he built up the military. He had major increases in defense spending. And he also promoted energy dominance, American energy dominance, and increased supplies dramatically. He encouraged drilling, production of both oil and natural gas. Biden has done the exact opposite, right? He attempted to cut military spending in terms of real terms. He also has been a major, he's launched basically a war against American energy production. And look what happened. Again, it emboldened Putin to a certain degree. So those are things that Trump did differently, and if he was president, would have continued with those policies. I don't think that the military buildup and energy independence and dominance would be anything but a deterrence against someone like Putin or anyone like him. But the other thing were the specific things, right? You know, Obama and Biden, in the prior administration, you know, they would only ship non-lethal aid to Ukraine. They sent it to an U.S. airbase in Poland and then put it in commercial trucks because they didn't want to offend Putin. Yeah. This was the time of the Great Reset between, the Obama administration and Putin. Whereas when Trump came in, he said, no, we'll ship it right in with, U.S. flagged ships and trucks. And he sent Javelin missiles and other lethal weapons. It's just absolutely apples and oranges in terms of how they dealt with Ukraine and Russia.
I mean, do you think Trump should run again? Because, I mean, there's many high-profile figures within the Republican Party that isn't happy with that. I mean, he's obviously strongly criticised, to say the least, his former Vice VP, Mike Pence.
Yes.
And he's gone after Mitch McConnell, many people that were previously, his allies. Is there many people left that would really back his presidency?
I wish that he was more polite and got along with Mitch McConnell and others. Like, you might not agree with Mitch McConnell. I mean, some of Trump's criticisms are valid, but, like many voters thought in 2016, Trump just said what we were thinking. And what many voters were thinking. And it's liberating sometimes, but it's also obnoxious. And that's, I think, cost him some votes in 2018 in the midterms,
but
as well as
also allies within the Republican Party.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that will cost him, and he would still win if the election were tomorrow. So if he chooses to run, and many of his inner circle thinks he will, I actually hope he doesn't, because I'd rather see a Ron DeSantis or a Mike Pompeo, someone younger, first of all, someone who can do 2 terms, and someone who believes in the Trump policies and supported President Trump, because his policies were great, and also his outcomes were great. We had energy independence, we had a stronger military, we had deterrence against idiots like Putin. So, I'd like to see a return of that. I think you could get that with someone besides Trump, and then perhaps without some of the drama that we get from his unfiltered commentary.
Potentially, yes, indeed.
Thank you
Greg,
so much.
thank you very much.
Great
Greg
to be here.
Swanson, Chair of Republicans Overseas UK, just giving his latest views on essentially the way that Biden is going about it. I nearly had a Biden moment then. I nearly called him Putin. There we go. Anyway, after the break, we'll be discussing the UK's ban of Russian oil with British lorry boss Philip Judge as he drives back from under fire Ukraine itself. But before that, it's time to have a look at this morning's headlines.
It's 11:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. Now, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says his country has shown over the past 2 weeks it will not surrender to Russia.
All the cities where Ukrainians are resisting, where they are protesting against the invaders. No, we stand with you. We are grateful. The cargo will still go, no matter how many bullets stop them. Humanitarian corridors will still work, and only time separates you from freedom. Short time. Believe in it. I believe.
The UK Ministry of Defence says Russian troops have not made any significant breakthroughs as fighting continues to the northwest of the capital in Ukraine. However, 4 cities are currently encircled by Russian forces and they continue to suffer heavy shelling. Meanwhile, Ukrainian air defences have so far prevented Russian fighter jets from achieving any degree of control in the air. Russia has said its troops on the ground will stop firing on the capital, along with 4 other cities, to let civilians evacuate. Sumi's regional governor says the humanitarian corridor in his city will continue today after 5,000 civilians were evacuated yesterday. Ukraine's ambassador to the UK said his officials would help deal with refugees if the visa rules were lifted. The Transport Secretary says 760 visas have been granted so far for Ukrainians coming to the UK. Grant Shapps told GB News checks, though, must remain in place.
It takes a bit of time to sort of crank up the system to make sure that we have visas and checks in place. Your viewers will understand we do need to check who is coming here for obvious reasons. But we've cranked up from just 800 appointments a day to 6,000 available.
Drivers have been hit by the second largest daily hike in diesel prices for more than 20 years. The average cost of a litre has reached a record 165.2 pence. It's as experts warn sanctions on Russian oil will further increase prices at the pump. Now, in some breaking news just in, Ukraine's state-run nuclear company has warned that radioactive substances could be released from Ukraine's Chernobyl nuclear power plant after its power connection was severed. Work to restore power to the plant, which has been occupied by Russian troops, has not been possible because fighting's underway. We'll have more on this developing story as we get any information. You are now up to date on GB News. We're on your TV, online and radio. Shortly, we'll be back to the point.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning, everybody. It is 11:38. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Falariman on GB News. We're live on your TV, radio, and online this morning.
Coming up in just a few moments will be Prime Minister's questions. But what kind of questions will Boris Johnson face this week? Here to give his predictions from right outside Parliament is our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. Thank you for joining us this morning. Darren, what can we expect from PMQs today?
Well, I think what we'll get, what we've had essentially in the last couple of weeks, is an awful lot of unity, of course, across the House of Commons. We've seen that with Sir Keir Starmer, with Ian Blackford and the SNP, essentially saying that they've got the back of the Prime Minister in large regards to what's happening in Ukraine. Standing ovations for the Ukrainian ambassador last week. Clearly the House gathered together yesterday to listen to President Zelenskyy. I think there are two issues in which Keir Starmer may well, though, feel the need to question the Prime Minister on. First of all, is on the issue of Ukrainian refugees. It has undoubtedly been a bit of a fiasco over the last couple of weeks. The UK government simply have not been on the front foot about all of this. First of all, they couldn't decide how easy they would allow or make it for Ukrainians to get into the UK. And then there's been this whole mess about where these centres that Ukrainians could come to, where they were going to be placed. Initially, we were told it was Calais, that would be set up. Then it wasn't going to be Calais, it was going to be Lille, some 70 miles away in northern France, with also centres in places like Paris and Brussels. But frankly, compared to what other countries have done, most notably Poland, that's received 1.2 million refugees, the UK's efforts have seemed reasonably pitiful so far. Again, the numbers of applications processed pretty small relative to other countries, including Western European countries. And then secondly, I think, Anaya, will be this issue of the cost of living. We know that decisions being made to sanction the Russian government are clearly having an effect on the oil and gas price here in the UK. That means that energy prices, which were already rising before this crisis, will only rise further. The cost of petrol at the pumps to heat your home. And I suspect the opposition, and indeed many Conservative MPs, will want to know what the government is going to do about this in the weeks to come. Interestingly, today in Ireland, for example, the Irish government have announced that they're essentially cutting the fuel duty on petrol and diesel at the pumps by 15 and 20 cents until the end of August from midnight tonight. Could the UK government go down that direction? Will it potentially offer more money, which it's done in the past, to try and mitigate those fuel bills? Or, and there will be questions about this too, will the government think about postponing those massive tax rises that we're expecting next month, both on national insurance and the changing of the income tax threshold? So I think on those two issues of visas for Ukrainian refugees and on the cost of living crisis, that is where there is a lack of unity in many regards across the House, not just confined to the opposition benches, but many Conservatives unsettled too. I think in the end that's where the opposition may well probe at PMQs, but on the grand scheme of things, they will once again want to show a sense of solidarity across the House.
Darren, thank you very much. Darren McCaffrey there, our political editor, right outside the Houses of Parliament. Just to whiz you through what's going to go on at PMQs. Of course, very shortly we're going to go to the wonderful Gloria Di Piero for the briefing and indeed, of course, PMQs. It will be gripping stuff, no doubt, but yeah, we're going to...
It was interesting, though. Boris Johnson yesterday was saying, you know, it's a time to put politics aside, but there still are many issues.
It's a time definitely not to put politics aside.
Exactly. A lot of political issues right now, actually, but I understand where he was coming from on that.
Yeah, but I mean, it would be nice also, just crucially again, Boris, please don't put the political issues aside, because actually the cost of living crisis is going to hammer people. But there we go. Now, let's take you through some of the headlines that you may well have missed. So, go on, you do this. Well, you love this story. You found this story yourself.
Endurance, the wooden ship used by Sir Ernest Shackleton to sail from Norway to the Antarctic in 1912, has been discovered at the bottom of the Weddell Sea 107 years after it sank. An expedition to find the ship was launched in February of this year. Dr. John Shears, the expedition leader, said his team had made polar history by completing what he called the world's most challenging shipwreck search in the freezing waters of Antarctica.
I honestly think that's so cool.
Yeah.
I know I said it before, but I'll say it again. It's unbelievably cool. I would just love to be able to have a rummage around with that ship. Also, can you imagine, you know, just the practicalities of this lot now. They know there's a ship there somewhere. They know it's around this kind of area. For years and years and years it's been looked for, and they managed to get the camera down there and you see on the back of it, endurance. You must just lose it.
The shipwreck, now designated as a protected historic site, a monument under the Antarctic Treaty, was found in what the discoverers called remarkably good condition.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Incredible. Right, OK. Software to decode the meaning behind pig snorts, right? OK. The researchers believe the AI pig translator could turn oinks, snuffles, grunts and squeals into actual emotions, which could help monitor animal well-being and better treatment of the animals. Maybe they could strap one up to me when I sleep.
The pig whisperer.
The pig whisperer, yes, absolutely.
rolling in with these jokes.
You are. That was a joke. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, rolling it, rolling in. So pigs are actually supposedly very, very intelligent, aren't they?
Yeah, and a lot of people associate them with being dirty and things like that, but apparently they're actually not.
No,
they're very, very hygienic, and many people keep miniature pigs as pets, and I think that's absolutely adorbs.
I love when people get missold a micro pig. And they just end up with a massive
just
sow,
a baby pig.
a full-size pig that just lives in their house now. I think that's great, but
but they wag their little tails like dogs.
Do they?
Yeah.
Some stuff. We're learning about pigs here. Right, OK, they hope to use this algorithm anyway to create an app for farmers to record their pig snorts and wheezes to find out what they're upset about or happy with. But this is fantastic because actually this is like us starting to properly communicate with animals, isn't it?
No, but I think, if you're a farmer that's been doing this for decades, I think you're pretty sound when it comes to communicating with animals then.
You speak pig.
Yeah,
well.
You've pretty much learnt their language by then, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we'll finish as we usually do with giving you the final word, GB Views at gbnews.uk. Thank you very much to everyone who has indeed emailed in. Now, a lot of you, of course, talking about the supply of jets. Says, is this an act of war, us supplying jets? That's from Muriel, or from America supplying jets?
Putin has already said that sanctions was effectively an act of war. So is us doing more, can it be more of an act of war?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know.
Absolutely. Why has Patrick got a City Blue laptop when he's a Manchester United fan? That's from Peter. Thank you very much, Peter. It was bought for me because my laptop was deemed too dirty to be on television on the outside, even though it was just scratched. It wasn't dirty, it's just scratched. And they had to cover it up. People found it physically offensive.
Well, that's it from us here at To The Point. But don't go away. Up next is The Briefing with the wonderful Gloria Di Piero and, of course, Prime Minister's Questions. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
See you.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGibbon. A fine day to come in the east with some sunshine, but wet in the west, especially western Scotland and Northern Ireland, and increasingly windy, particularly in the northwest, ahead of a weather front which is moving in very slowly from the Atlantic. The isobars squeezing together ahead of that front with the risk of gales or even severe gales during the morning across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. But those winds do ease as the front moves through. It's a slow-moving front, but it gives some